The love that was never spoken. It was a cool autumn evening when Sarah stood by the window, gazing out at the fading light. The orange hue of the setting sun painted the sky with a soft glow, making her feel as though time was slipping through her fingers. It had been years since she had seen him, but his memory was as fresh as if it had happened yesterday. She adjusted the silver locket around her neck, a gift he had given her before everything had changed. The locket, now slightly tarnished with age, held a picture of them together, just before their worlds had fractured into what seemed like irreparable pieces. They had met when they were young. Sarah was just 16, a quiet girl with a passion for reading, while Mark, 2 years older, was everything she had ever admired. He had that confidence, that charm that made him the center of attention wherever he went. But it wasn't just his outward presence that drew her in. It was the way he could talk to her, like she mattered, like her opinions and thoughts were something to be cherished. They shared everything from the mundane to the deep, unspoken parts of themselves that they'd never shared with anyone else. The bond they formed was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced, and over time, she realized something she hadn't wanted to admit at first. She was in love with him. But that wasn't something she could easily say. Not to Mark. Not yet. It wasn't that he hadn't shown her kindness or affection. He had, more than anyone else. But somehow, the words never came. Maybe it was fear of rejection, or maybe it was because she wasn't sure if he felt the same way. She couldn't risk losing the friendship, the connection, the only thing that felt like home. And so, they remained friends, close, inseparable, but never crossing the line into something more. They would talk for hours, laughing about anything and everything, and sharing silent moments that spoke volumes. But that silence was the unsung language of their relationship, a language they both understood, but never voiced aloud. Then, after high school, things began to change. Mark decided to pursue college in another city, far away from their small town. Sarah, still unsure of what she wanted to do, stayed behind, taking a gap year to figure things out. The distance between them grew, but their friendship remained. They wrote letters and texted late into the night, just as they always had. But soon, life began to take them on separate paths. Sarah got a job at a local bookstore, and Mark settled into his new life, meeting new people, making new friends. It was during one of their late-night conversations that Sarah first realized things might never go back to the way they were. Mark was telling her about a girl he had met at a party, someone who had caught his eye, someone who had made him laugh in the same way she used to. As Sarah listened to him talk about this new person, her heart twisted with a feeling she couldn't explain. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was the crushing realization that he might never see her the way she had always secretly hoped he would. But she said nothing. She couldn't. She couldn't bear to break the unspoken rule that had governed their friendship all these years. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Mark and Sarah spoke less and less. They were both busy with their own lives, their own pursuits. The letters stopped coming, and the texts grew more infrequent. Eventually, even their late-night calls became a rarity, replaced by silence. Then, one day, out of the blue, Sarah received a message from Mark. It had been nearly a year since they had last spoken. The message was short, just a simple update on his life, a brief mention of his new job, his new circle of friends, and how things were going with the girl he had told her about. "I guess I should have reached out sooner," Mark wrote. "I've missed our talks." Sarah sat back, staring at the words on her screen, feeling the weight of all the unspoken emotions she had carried for so long. She wanted to respond, to tell him everything, how much she missed him, how much she had wished for things to be different, how her heart had never stopped longing for him. But she didn't. Instead, she typed a simple reply, "It's good to hear from you, Mark. I've missed you too." That was the last message they ever exchanged. Years passed. Sarah moved to a new city, met new people, and found new opportunities, but the ache in her chest never fully went away. She'd had relationships, casual ones, even a serious one or two, but none of them ever quite measured up to the feeling she had when she was with Mark. There was something in the way they understood each other that no one else could replicate. But even so, she never allowed herself to wonder what might have happened if she had said something, if she had been brave enough to confess her feelings when she had the chance. Then, one day, while scrolling through social media, she saw a picture of him. It was a wedding photo, and there he was, Mark, standing at the altar, a smile on his face, his eyes sparkling with joy as he looked at the woman standing beside him. For a moment, Sarah couldn't breathe. The world seemed to pause. There he was, living the life she had never imagined for him, marrying the woman he had chosen. And in that moment, she realized something profound. She had never truly let go of him. Not completely.
But now she had to.
A week passed before Sarah finally allowed herself to cry. It was not the sadness of loss, but the grief of what could have been. The realization that they had both silently carried their love for each other, but had never spoken it aloud, had never dared to ask, what if? She hadn't regretted the friendship they had shared, the bond they had formed, but now, standing at the crossroads of her own life, Sarah understood that the love that had never been spoken was not a source of sorrow. It was a beautiful, untainted part of her past, something that shaped who she had become. And even though she had never said the words to him, she had loved him in the only way she knew how. Years later, Sarah would look back at her time with Mark not with regret, but with a deep sense of gratitude for the love they had shared. It wasn't the kind of love that always needed to be said, not the kind that followed the conventional path. It was the kind of love that lived in the silences between them, in the shared moments that didn't require words, and in the quiet understanding that sometimes love doesn't have to be spoken to be real. And for that, she would always be thankful.